Blue John by Berlie Doherty. Imagine a world that is locked in ice. Imagine the purple-blue heart of a glacier opening up to the gold of the sun. The mountains of ice crack and the gush of rivers forces rocks apart. Imagine the water surging into all the hollows of the earth and billowing down and down under the ground, hollowing out huge caves, massive chambers of darkness. That's where the Queen of Darkness lives. She lives forever under the ground in the shadow of the mountain called Mantor, and she loves the darkness, the velvet cool, the long, long hush of silence. It is her home. Before she was rushed down by the thawing ice mountains into the shelter of the cavern, she snatched two things that she could not bear to leave behind. I will take the purple-blue heart of the glacier, she sang, because it is the most beautiful colour in the world, and I will take the gold of the sun. She clasped the colours close to her, and the water swept her down into the darkness, down and deep, deep down into the cavern that she was never to leave again. I don't know which of you I love the most, she crooned to her colours, the blue of the glacier or the gold of the sun, ice or fire. I love you both. She pressed them to her, the one ice cold and the other burning hot. She held them close and moulded them together like clay and breathed on them. And this made a child who was blue like the ice and gold like the sun. Blue John, she whispered, your name is Blue John and you are mine forever. She kissed her child and he fell into a deep, deep sleep of enchantment that was to last for 1,000 years. Stalactites grew like coral, like twisted icicles, like the horns of unicorns, like the gnarled teeth of goblins. Miners crept through the tunnels and chipped and hammered with their picks and tools. Their children crawled on hands and knees through the narrow passageways, holding candles in their mouths, pushing cartloads of lead and stone in front of them. And still Blue John slept, and still the Queen of Darkness nursed him in her arms of rock. And then, one day, Blue John woke up. He gazed around him at the gleaming wet rocks and the drip, drip, dripping stalactites. Where am I? He cried. Oh, where am I? Where am I? Where am I? Slowly he stretched out his creaking limbs and climbed down from his high ledge. He rubbed his eyes and gazed around him. After a time he began to make out the shine of water on rocks and the high vault of the cavern over his head. His feet slithered away from him and he toppled head over heels into a pool. He picked himself up and began again, skidding and sprawling, crawling and tumbling, and his footsteps chimed like bells. Who am I? Where am I? Oh, where am I? Am I? The Queen of Darkness laughed and put her strong, comforting arms around him. You're mine, she whispered like soft moss against his cheek. You're safe with me, Blue John. This is your home. But don't go into the light. You must never, ever go into the light. You must stay here and make my dark cave beautiful. Now you can move around and dance and make it shine for me. But if you step outside and into the light, you will turn to stone and you will sleep forever. Blue John wandered all of the corridors and passages of the cavern. He wriggled through holes and slid down slides. He clambered into cracks and swung from stalactites. He splashed through pools and leapt from ledges. And whenever he went, the Queen of Darkness could see him. Amethyst blue and amber gold shining like ice and fire. Yes, Blue John, she sighed, you are beautiful and you are mine. One day, Blue John clambered up from the cave's deepest chambers and he heard sounds from outside. He could hear very faintly the call of the curlew on the moors and the watery ripple of the skylark. He could hear the wind shimmering through the gorge of winnets, and far away he could hear the bird cries of children playing. There was a tiny eye of light high up in the end of the passage. He wanted to touch it. He felt as if he was being drawn towards it as the sea is drawn by the moon. yet he could hear the voice of his mother pulling him back to the safe darkness. Blue John, stay with me. But the sounds from outside were growing nearer. He could hear voices and footsteps and the tiny high sound of someone singing. The sounds were coming towards the cavern. Dark shapes were blocking out the pinhole light of sky. Blue John ran to the deepest chamber and hid there, frightened. Who are they? He cried. Who are they? Are they? Are they? The Queen of Darkness laughed. They're children, she told him. People come here to look at my caves, to wonder at my marvels and mystery. Be still and you can watch them. See how the creatures of light stumble and fall in my world, but never, never follow them into their world. Promise me, Blue John. I promise, he said. He clambered up onto his shelf and lay there, still as stone, watching and waiting as the sounds of outside grew nearer, and he was a little bit excited, but also a little bit afraid. And here they come, said the Queen of Darkness. Here come the children. In they came, giggling and shouting and pushing each other, slipping and sliding and laughing out loud, tripping and ducking and eating their sandwiches, fumbling and falling, and full of jokes and courage and sunshine. But as they came further and deeper into the caverns, a hush grew over them. Their voices sank down into whispers. They crept forward, slowly feeling with their soundless feet, blind as moles, hands clasping, and their breath as quiet as ghosts around their lips. They saw that the darkness was full of magic. Blue John lay still as a stone. He had never seen children before. He watched the wonder in their eyes. He saw how their faces opened with awe as his Queen of Darkness swirled silently around them. One of the children struck a match. Its blue flame danced like a moth. The boy lit a candle and held it up so his face glowed like a moon and his eyes shimmered like stars. He passed the candle around and the other children lit theirs and held them up, and the cave was full of pale white moons and glittering stars. The lights of the candles flickered and gleamed on the wet walls. A little girl with ribbons as green as trails of moss held out her candle towards Blue John's ledge. There he was, lit up in the darkness, with his amethyst eyes purply blue like the deepest glacier, and his amber hair as golden as the sun. Beautiful, whispered the little girl. You're beautiful. You're beautiful, echoed Blue John. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. The girl stepped into the middle of the chamber and began to move around slowly, slowly, holding out her candle to light up the pockets and eyes and creases of the chamber. The satiny water on its walls, the shimmer and glisten, the blue and the gold. She began to dance. And soon the children were dancing in a crazy, laughing, happy way. Their shadows leapt around them. Blue John tumbled down from his shelf and began to dance amongst them. He couldn't help himself. He flung out his arms and legs and he tossed back his head, and his eyes were wide with happiness. Stop! The Queen of Darkness screamed. You're spoiling my silence. Stop dancing. Go away. She streamed around the children like the wind of the night, and her cold breath chilled them and made them dance faster and more wildly. She blew the candle flame so they flickered and flattered like birds. Go away! And the children ran, dancing and laughing, tumbling out of the Queen's chamber and up along the echoing passages, dancing and laughing, singing and skipping out into the brilliant light of day. And then they were gone. And suddenly as they came, the children had disappeared, and their voices and laughter and the sunshine of the outside world had gone with them. Blue John was alone with the silence. He searched through the shadows of the caverns. He listened to the darkness, but there was no trace left of the children or of the little smiling girl with ribbons of moss in her hair who had danced for him. Blue John crept up along the long corridor that led to the mouth of the caves and stood looking out. He didn't know it was possible to feel such sadness. Where are you, my little smiling girl? He whispered. His whisper spiralled away from him and echoed back to the chamber to the Queen of Darkness. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? He crept as far as he dared towards the eye light of day. It burnt his eyes, yet he peered out. Where are you? Far below, he could see the children running down the green slopes towards the village. His smiling girl was at the back. Almost as if she knew he was there watching her, she stopped and turned, looking back up the hill, and she lifted her hand just as if she was waving to him. Blue John lifted his hand just a little. "Blue John, I made you out of ice and fire," the Queen of Darkness whispered, and her voice echoed and sighed around the twisting passages. "Made you for myself to make my darkness beautiful." He felt as if his heart was going to break in two. "Stay with me," she said. "You can only live in the shadows." "I know," said Blue John, "I know." But he turned away from his queen and stepped out into the sunshine, into the brilliant golden day. The Queen of Darkness was wild with anger and sorrow, with jealousy and grief. She swirled like whirlwind around her caves and grottos, crying out for Blue John to come home. Her breath was black and cold as nightmares, and her eyes were glittering ebony. Her walls and rivers streamed. "Come home! You can't live in the world of light. You belong to the darkness forever." The children were playing in the school playground, shouting and laughing to each other about how their candles had blown out in the cavern just like that, and how they had turned and stumbled through the tunnels of darkness, clinging to each other. "You were scared," they shouted to each other. "No, I wasn't, you were," they shouted back, and they tossed the fun of being frightened backwards and forwards like a bouncing ball. But deep inside themselves they held the quiet magic of the caverns. That was a secret never to be forgotten. The little girl with green ribbons sat on her own long after the other children had run back home. She thought about Blue John and how he had shone in the darkness and how he had danced with her, just her. And when she looked up, there he was, running down the grassy slant of the mountainside. "Blue John," she called, "I'm here." He raced towards her, hopping and skipping and tumbling head over heels through the bracken and the heather, laughing out loud. She caught his hand in hers and they danced, swinging each other round until it seemed as if the birds and the clouds and the trees and the rocky green bones of the mountainside were spinning round over their heads, and they would never stop spinning. Never. But the Queen of Darkness called to him. "Come home, Blue John, come home." Her voice rose out of the rocks and earth. The sides of the mountain heaved with her voice. Its deep shadow fell across the valley. The light of the sun drained from the sky and the blue slipped away to grey. Blue John could feel his blood slowing down and his limbs growing heavy as stones. He dropped his hands away from the little girls. He turned away from her. He could hardly walk. He climbed slowly back to the cavern and crept to the deep chamber where he lived. He clambered up onto his ledge and stretched himself out with the weariness of thousands of years closing down on him. He couldn't keep his eyes open. The Queen bent over him and hummed a song that was like the murmur of ice stretching in sunlight. She rocked him in her quiet arms. Soon the deep sleep of her enchantment washed over him. His eyes closed slowly and the purple blue of their colours seeped into the stones. The golden yellow of his hair poured like the light of the sun down the walls of the cavern. Crystals of ice and fire gleamed in the darkness. The little girl with ribbons like trailing moss in her hair came into the cavern alone. She walked down the long dripping passages and through the hollow chambers until she came to the deepest chamber of all. "Where are you?" she called, and her own voice answered her. "Where are you? Where are you? Where are you?" Lying on the ground was a shining piece of rock. It was blue and yellow. She picked it up and closed her hand round it. And did she imagine this? Could she feel it beating like a tiny heart? "Take it," the dark echoes whispered to her, and whispered again down all the corridors. "Take it. Keep it safe. It's for you."